Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lost opportunity, exclaimed the parliamentary leader of the Labour Party. He knows what he's talking about. In a crisis, there are two ways of dealing with it. We'll not go into the detail of Ukraine, COVID. Many of us have talked about it. First of all, there is the Labour Party PMSD way, the one that was adopted, the one that they're on record. What did they do? Stimulus package. Honorable Siratan talked about it. I won't repeat what he said. Stimulus package to boost the economy. And they were themselves saying it. The population will get the crumbs, les miettes. That is job creation, and some money will be distributed. What happened? All that money was squandered. I won't give names, but we all know. The one in the financial services sector, he had a BPO, a business processing office. Aston Martin, Rolex watches distributed to his friends in politics. In the Labour Party, which Honourable Boulel leads now in Parliament. The second one, German Berlin, fight after 6 months. Another one in the East took the money, millions, and then closed down, fight. We don't know where the money went. The last one, a great friend of the Labour Party, took millions, closed down, and in my constituency, a domain has been constructed with that money. A lost opportunity indeed, Mr. Speaker. Because that is the opportunity they wanted to have. Take money in times of crisis. Profiter de la crise. That has been the history of the Labour Party in power, and they dare to talk of lost opportunities. And not enough. Honourable Lejonga went down the list to finance these people. They took money from the poor, the tax, the bread, all that Honourable Lejonga mentioned. Taking money from the poor to give to the rich Robert des Bois à l'envers. That is one way of dealing with the crisis. Perhaps it's true. It's Chicago boy politics, which works in a dictatorship. But in a democracy like ours, we have a second way, the one which the Alliance has been proposing since 2015 and which is now being put into practice for the last 7 years now. What do we do? Sound management. And that increases growth rates. Use money advisedly. Boost crucial sectors of the economy in order to get additional revenue and therefore give additional benefits to the people and make the population feel à l'aise. It's true that the international context has been affecting our population, but at least now we see how we do the maximum to alleviate the effects of the international crisis for the benefit of our population. Additional sectors, apart from tourism, financial services, all this very ably managed. We have agriculture. Can I just respond to what Honorable Lubin said on macadamia nuts, and not macadamia, macadamia nuts? Well, of course, in 2017, I think it was Honorable Siratan who announced the start in macadamia nuts. I've looked it up, and it takes at least 10 years before you get one nut. And 2 nuts is also 10 years. So, and that is a thriving sector, Hawaii being the first one. And it is going to happen, we hope, because it is a good, productive sector. Second sector I want to mention is the one mentioned by the Honorable Chief Whip. It is apiculture. Yes, honey is a promising sector. I have been impressed by the quality of honey made in Mauritius. Very expensive, but with increased production, the prices will go down. But a word of warning: fake honey, made on the basis of syrup and chemical substances. We must not allow the reputation of our honey to be threatened by people who are using fake production on our market. And I've noted, and I will read impatiently the food bill which is going to be introduced, but already we have adequate legislation to deal with these matters. Use of artificial intelligence in agriculture as well, which has not been mentioned, which I think is interesting because internationally, in China especially, artificial intelligence is being used for many things, like calculating water resources, the water needs of the plantations, calculating the growth rate and the récolte, and all this is done now at home or in the office. We'll have to work it in order to increase our production. There is therefore no magic in this. It is just hard work, sound management, good thinking that is giving these results. We are result-oriented, not blah, blah, blah. That is the point which must be made. But at the same time, we have given incentives to industry. The wage support scheme during the COVID lockdown. What was it, if not a way to keep the tourism industry alive at a time that it should have died? Or else it would have been taken over by vultures. We saved that industry. And that is a good point for our country. The MIC has been the subject of harsh criticism by the parliamentary leader of the Labour Party. But we've got to understand, the Bank of Mauritius has reserves. Where do these reserves come from? From the population. It is the population that has accumulated the wealth in the reserves. Isn't it right that at the time that the population is in need, that we should help? And that is what MSC is doing. I'm sure the Minister of Finance will talk more in a more learned way than I can ever do on MIC. But all over the world, except for the US, this is what central banks have been doing. The Bank of England is lending directly to firms and enterprises. The Bank of England, the oldest bank apart from the Swedish central bank, the oldest central bank. What is Banque de France doing? All these European central banks, they have to help their country. Do they sleep with a stash of money and wait for the country to collapse? Now, and I don't know why, out of the blue, I don't know whether it was a passing mistake or what, out of the blue, Honorable Boulet talks ill of the Untitled deal. Get your notes well. Your favorite partner. What will you think of what you have just said of the Untitled deal? The Untitled deal turned land into what it is today. Of course, not with the 100% success rate that we would have expected, but thousands and thousands of young Mauritians are actively engaged in the cyber city, and it was, yes, the MMM and the MSM, which together, Anirudh Jagannath, Paul Béranger, together pooled their resources, their thinking, and yes, they bought land from the sugar industry. What is the problem? Buying land from Omnicane and Medin, if it is for development purposes, I don't know the details. But of course, if Honorable Boulel is saying something which leads people into inquiry, of course an inquiry must be done. But I don't believe that this is so. Mr. Speaker, COVID will end. The war will come to a stop one day. But all this will be behind us. There is one thing that is irreversible. We can slow it down, but we cannot stop it. And some of my colleagues on both sides of the House have referred to it. It is climate change. And that is the problem, and that is not only a national issue, an international issue, a universal approach is being required to fight climate change. We can't do much, but whatever we can do, we have to do. We are past the Climate Change Act. The Department of Climate Change, the Climate Change Committee, are structures which are here to help us fight climate change. But we can't fight climate change through institutions. The whole population, opposition, government, together must fight climate change and try to change our culture and our habits. We have obligations under the Kyoto Protocol as amended in Doha, the Paris Agreement, when we had just been in office. But let us not forget the population and the NGOs. In our law, Section 19 imposes on government departments the duty to undertake public consultations when developing strategies and policies in respect of climate change. But it can't be, the burden cannot be only on government departments. The burden is a shared burden with the public, with NGOs, and we've got to participate together. I hope that the Department of Climate Change is able to instill and convince the NGOs that they need to work together in order to combat climate change. Much more difficult than Ukraine or COVID. Much, much more difficult because it is irreversible. And we are playing with our lives, and no amount of increase in pensions will be able to cure climate change. I now come to a matter that has shocked many people and that has been the subject of preoccupations. I thought that I would spend some time, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, on that shocking revelation for some, but known facts for most of us. That is the torture by police officers of suspects in order either to repress or punish, but more often to extort confessions. Before I come to torture by rogue police officers, let me talk a little bit on state torture, which has been, in history, we can go back to the Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, when the King of France wanted to exterminate the Order of the Templars in the 14th century, 1307. He got all these monks and priests to be tortured with the complicity of the Pope at that time, to be tortured into confessing things just to be able to lay hands on their fortune. That is now a historical fact. It was torture within the legal system. The 18th century saw an end to the torture, but then in latest 70 or 100 years, it has resurfaced. We have had the Gestapo, which had amazing techniques of torture. After the war, many of the Vichy police were enrolled in the police in Algeria, and we know how they tortured with not the complicity, under the directives of the Minister of Interior himself, who then became President of the Republic 20 years later. But France, the state of France, participated in the torture of Algerian freedom fighters at that time. And it was part of the legal system. America, the United States, President Bush signed a presidential decree allowing the use of torture on prisoners in Guantanamo. So state torture is very much a preoccupation in spite of all the conventions, the Convention on Torture that has been signed. But in Mauritius also, there has existed state torture. It's good that I recall in the 1970s, when the state of emergency was proclaimed. In March 1972, the MMM members were arrested under emergency rules, placed in Beaubassin, thrown in Beaubassin prison. No provisional charge, I will come back to this later. Under no provisional charge, not sent to court to be able to complain. And then, on the 16th of June 1972, 50 years to the day, today we are 17 June, 50 years almost exactly, taken from Beaubassin prison, because in Beaubassin they were exercising too much freedom in a prison, can you imagine? And sent to special political cells reserved for political detainees. Among the MMM members, there were two, Virassomi, Hervé Masson, and a third one who is present in the House today, Honorable Béranger. The three were the target of what has been termed mental torture. No need to go into the details. I talked about this when, in 2003, the Criminal Code Amendment Bill was discussed in this House. But suffice it to quote what Dr. Iptong wrote in a report at that time when he went to court. It is my opinion that no human being should be required to live under these conditions of almost total sensory deprivation. It is indeed surprising that they have not broken down mentally, having been kept under these conditions for as long as 6 weeks. That was state torture under the Labour Party PMSD government of the 1970s. And it's good that we be reminded of this. Some people may have forgiven, but no one has the right to forget, because that must live in our history books so that we always are reminded there is always the danger. And they talk of democracy. They talk of the threat to democracy, and they complained. Virassomi and Masson went to the Supreme Court, and Béranger was a witness in the case to describe to the judges what mental torture they were suffering. And you know what government defense was? That mental torture was admissible because they had not been bodily tortured. And it was in 2003 that Anirudh Jagannath and Kader Bayat were counsel in the case. It was in 2003 that Anirudh Jagannath and Paul Béranger passed the Criminal Code Amendment Bill in order that mental torture be also prohibited. And I urge my colleagues to go and see and read the Hansard of 2003 and the revelations that are contained in there. Because of time constraints, I'm not going to go into it. Now, today, and since 2003, the penalty is a fine of 150,000 rupees and 10 years imprisonment. I heard the leader of the opposition say, he thought it was 25,000 rupees, but never mind. But of course, it is not the severity of the punishment that counts. It is the certainty of punishment. And what is the problem? The problem is that these rogue police officers have a culture of impunity. They are protected by their hierarchy. I hear that in a police station, the first floor, they were beating up prisoners and torturing them. But what about police officers in the ground floor? When they're hearing what is happening, they didn't denounce? I take it well that it is a minority who are torturing. But what about those who remained silent? They are as culpable. Yes, Honorable Boulel has mentioned those who got the pen drive or the USB. Yes, perhaps. The inquiry will reveal what has happened, who knew what, and who didn't know what. But for the moment, we know we have had confessions of retired police officers and police officers in office who say, of course, we cannot take a suspect and give him a cup of tea and some laddu. No one asked you to give laddu to suspects. You only asked to respect the human rights of people. And there is a problem with this torture business. You torture somebody into confessing a crime. He goes in court, and if he's got some good evidence, he will be found not guilty, he will be acquitted. Do you realize that if he is guilty, you have allowed by your torture a guilty person to escape from punishment? And if he is not guilty and that he is being tortured into a false confession, you have allowed the guilty person to be scot-free and still be roaming about. How many offences we know where this has happened? So this goes to the basic fabric of our society and of law and order. The leader of the opposition has suggested a commission of inquiry. As the Honourable Prime Minister said, first of all, you can't use evidence adduced before a commission of inquiry. It will be a waste of time and of money, because it costs a lot. But never mind the money. But the time which will be wasted, whereas the institutions which are there, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, which is chaired by an ex-judge of the Supreme Court. I hear people talking against the IPCC. Well, we've appointed lawyers and an ex-judge on that commission. They have to do their job, of course. They have to inquire, and it is not a commission of inquiry that is going to do the job. Then I hear Honourable Utim and Honourable Lobin cry out, abolish the provisional charge. Well, in 1970, that is precisely what Labour Party and PMSD did. Abolish the provisional charge. That gives ample time to the police to torture persons without having to present them before a court. And that is the basic protection of our citizens. The police, when they arrest somebody, they must bring him before a court without undue delay. And when that suspect comes before the court, he can have access to his lawyer, which in 1970 they did not have. In 1972, they were in line barracks. Even the mother, the wife, could not come. The sister could not come to see them. And the provisional charge is what enables the suspect and his lawyer to make his complaint. So, and Honorable Utim cited the Law Reform Commission's report, which says, replace the provisional charge by a custody officer, a police officer within the station is going to afford the protection which a magistrate is supposed to give. I am sorry. I am against the abolition. And what provisional charge are we talking about? The provisional charge does not exist in our law of procedure, of criminal procedure. What exists is our Constitution, which says that when a suspect is brought before a court, the court then decides what to do with him, either to send him back to jail or to release him unconditionally or under conditions after hearing the case. That is what the magistrate does. A custody officer, a police sergeant, is going to decide this, my liberty. So many people here in this house have been able to have access to the judiciary after having been unduly arrested, because the police will do excesses. But that is not a reason to abolish the provisional charge. I will be always against this bill. The people who have suggested it, they don't have criminal law practice. I have been doing this for 40 years, and I know how it happens every day, in everyday life before our courts. And I repeat it, provisional charge is a mere administrative expediency, because the magistrate, when a suspect is brought before him or her, he's got to note down something. It's a court of record. Where is he going to note it down? He opens a file, and what is he going to call the file? Oh, we devised, ages and ages past, a term called the provisional information. But that is only a term. What is essential is that a person's rights should not be affected, as the opposition is claiming, should not be affected by the abolition of the provisional charge. Of course, we can reform. We can give magistrates more extensive powers of inquiry. We can try and see, enhance the powers. I've seen that 14.4 million rupees are allocated to the IPCC. Well, we can see whether they should be revamped, have more equipment, more investigative tools. That is another matter. But don't abolish something just before lawyers in the Law Reform Commissions have said abolish this. The key to the matter is proper training of law enforcement officials, of police officers. Article 10 of the Convention Against Torture enjoins all state parties, including Mauritius, to give adequate training to law enforcement officials and to all those persons who may be in contact with suspects or prisoners. The key is therefore education of our police officers, because these people, they work under stress, they want to deliver results, and they use the shortcut of torture because they want to produce a suspect to their boss. It is there that we need to educate. We need to keep track of the movements of people who are being arrested. We need to insist on proper record keeping. And all this requires training. But let me say that I was personally very pleased when the new commissioner of police was appointed. Well, first of all, he has never been part of the CID, and that is a plus mark. His hands are not tainted. Secondly, he has experience. He was posted for 2 or 3 years to monitor the training of police officers in Southeast Asia, the Philippines, and all these countries. So he has actual experience. He worked for the International Red Cross. We hope that this new commissioner of police will be able to put his experience, his knowledge to good end. And that will go a long way. Therefore, torture must be very high on our agenda. These videos have helped to shock the nation, and it's good, because there was too much of talk saying, well, you've got to beat these people up, but not too much, etc. Yes, they went too far with the taser. It's not going too far, going too near. Torture is unacceptable by whatever means used. And therefore, we hope that this matter has shocked the nation as it should. Let me say a word on what Honorable Bhagwan had to say. First of all, he talks of my constituency number 19. Let me remind him and the people of our constituency, Mrs. Doriau and myself, and of Honorable Navakalingam, who I must say, although we are in the opposition, we are good partners in the constituency, all 3 of us, because we need to work for the people of the inhabitants of the region and not spend our time fighting each other. It's very good. Honorable Béranger does not take part too much, but he is an MP, he's a good MP. He goes to his constituency, etc. We are not here to fight querelle de clocher among the 4 members of the constituency. This is why I cannot accept the criticism of Honorable Bhagwan. 250 million renovation of plaza. Collendavelloo, 70 million in the gymnasium. The Mediclinic in Stanley. La Liberater, since 2000, the candidates were promising Liberater. We have delivered Liberater. It was difficult. Honorable Nagalinga makes a meal out of the state of the roads. The roads are being redone. And Honorable Bhagwan also talked about it. 109 million by the municipality of Bobassa-Rosil for resurfacing of roads, excluding what the CWA is going to do. The Treff Sports Complex, I know people of Treff are watching me on their big screen now. Sports Complex, renovated drains, 60 million. Renovation of Quorum Gymnasium. When in 2014 we won the election, Honorable Doriau knows, Honorable Naganingam and Honorable Béranger also know. Rosil was a desolate place. Today we have put life back into Rosil. And let me remind Honorable Bhagwan and Honorable Kirin and Honourable Fouquin, who probably is too new in the constituency. Honourable Bhagwan looks after my constituency. Let me look after his now. The Mediclinic in Coromandel. Us. The sport complex in Montroche. Us. The sports complex in Berkeley. Us. Chebel, Kosovo. Us. Kosovo Sports Complex. Jardin Balfour. What was Jardin Balfour in 2015? Today, go and see, go near Jardin Balfour every Sunday. See how you don't have a parking space because it is the favorite leisure spot of the inhabitants of Beaubassin and Petite Rivière of number 20. This is what we have done. And Honourable Bhagwan, I'm sorry, I don't like doing that sort of politics, but I have to do it. Because I can't be provoked and let provocation be unpunished. He talks of percentage. He talks of our votes in Rosehill, the bastion. We don't need to do that sort of politics. The elections were challenged. I told my lawyers when it was apparent that there were arithmetical mistakes, I told my lawyers, do not raise technical points. Consent to the recount. Those were instructions I gave to my lawyers. And we told that to the court, and there was the recount. The recount was held. After the recount was held, not all, one or two persons in the MMM said, we are going to appeal, we don't agree. But they lost the candidate. So the appeal was overboard. I don't agree. I'm sorry, but I don't agree with insults given to the candidate who was my opponent. It's not true. We know, I know certainly, how she was motivated. But that is another story, not to be put in public. But then, when Honourable Bhagwan talks of percentages, number 7, Mouvement militant mauricien, 6.502%. Number 8, 8% difference between Parti Malin and Mouvement militant mauricien. Hein? Number 9, an ex-MMM, Honourable Nakchedi, scored 47.234%. The MMM candidate, 7.408%. Number 19, I hear Mr. Bagan talk of our percentages repeating. The leader of the MMM in his bastion polled 51% of the votes in your bastion in 2019, 2014. Don't make me talk of 2014. You just shut up and don't make me talk of 2000.
Order! 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 Honourable Bagobin.
6%. 1% between Honourable Nagalingam and Honourable Doriaou. and myself, I'm sorry, and 2% between Honorable Doriaou and Honorable Nagalim. There is no problem on this. But don't come and look for trouble on percentages. Look at yourself in the mirror first.
Order! 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 Order!
And la cerise sur le gâteau, la grosse cerise sur le gâteau. Number 20, Bastion. 46.251%, less than 0.5% of the votes for Honorable Bagwan. So, you discuss percentages with me? I have my percentages and I can give you more than that. But we have never said that. I have never gone into this. But it's good because you look for it, you're going to get it. Same constituency. After I have said 46.251% for Honorable Bagwan, just draw your own conclusion. Honorable Kirin, 32.609%. How this big difference? 32.609 against 46.251. The answer is so obvious. And we will see the next municipal elections. I hope we get it sooner than later, because we will see when they come and bring Ramgulam in the towns. Then we will see what the answer the citizens will give them. I have done, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.